Hey guys, meteorologist Craig Moeller here along with meteorologist Tim Pandajis. We wanted to talk a little bit with you about some of the stuff that's kind of floating around out on the web right now, the internet and social media, and that's the potential for snow next week.
All right, a couple of our longer range models have indicated the possibility of a changeover scenario with a very strong cold front coming on through Tuesday night into early Wednesday.
We know it's going to be cold, but the question is, could we see some snow? And a couple of the models, and this happens all the time, some of the models bite on it and go big, and then what you have is some weather enthusiasts that maybe like to keep an eye on the weather. They might grab a model they see online, put it out there, and all of a sudden people are thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to get a foot of snow? Or even 6 to 8 inches is one of the sites is kind of putting out.
Right, and a lot of those were showing that like yesterday or the day before, so there was a lot of time between the storm's arrival and the model. So a lot of time for that to change. You can't bite on something right when you see it and expect it not to change.
And people were asking us for our opinions on this here at 13 News Now, and this is why we always stress it's important to stay with a credible source, people that you know and trust. So let's take a look at the models as they look this morning. Quite a difference.
And we'll start with the GFS model. You may have heard that. That's the American Run model. It goes out about 10 days on this particular site, but it goes out further, but a lot of times it's not as accurate. But we are comparing the overnight run with the very early morning run here. And you'll already notice a difference because
so this was the earlier
run. The earlier run shows snow, accumulating snows here across Hampton Roads, northeastern North Carolina. Then you go 6 hours later at the next run, and it is less than half of what it had in the previous run. So this is the kind of things we're looking at, big flip-flops per model run.
And again, yesterday and last evening, this thing was throwing out, 6 inches or more in some areas, and people are like, oh my gosh, they post these images, and everybody's thinking, time to go run out and get the bread and the milk and the eggs and all that kind of stuff, right? And now you see just 12 hours later, a couple runs, there's next to nothing. Now, there were a couple things that we were kind of hesitant to bite on too much of an early snow with this system setting up, and we're talking about the warm air that's in place ahead of it. The cold air is coming with this. Talk a little bit about the setup.
Yeah, this isn't the type of setup that usually is conducive for us here to see accumulating snows. It's a catch-up game. The cold air has to come on in and meet up with the moisture, and a lot of times the cold air gets here just a little bit too late, and that's what we think will happen here. Talk a little bit about what usually is a good scenario for us to see snow.
When we have cold air that's already in place, we're talking sub-freezing temperatures or the ground's frozen ahead of these systems, and a coastal low comes up or something draws in moisture off the ocean into that cold air, that's where we typically get hit a little harder. That's not the case with this, and a lot of what these models are projecting with some of that snow yesterday and even earlier this morning, that's going to fall as liquid. These model outputs kind of assume that 10 to 1, which is kind of an average snow to rainfall ratio. So, at the beginning of this system, a lot of what would fall wouldn't fall as that fluffy snow, but rather either a slushy mix or rain. So, again, we're not overly biting on that. Now, you wanted to talk about one of the other models, I think the Euro?
The European model. So we have the two long range. You've obviously heard of the European. That tends to be a little bit better off on some of these longer range scenarios here, but here I'll play it out going all the way through that time frame in question here, which is, I don't know if this is going to go out. This is actually going from wrong time frame. Let's see. One moment.
Quick.
We go back to the 0Z here.
One previous run.
Okay, so there it goes out Sunday, Monday, into Tuesday. So that also, this is the overnight run, by the way. Same one that we saw with the GFS showing accumulating snows. It has less, but it has some.
It had a little bit there. It's a little bit more off to the northwest. Now, the question is, that cold air that comes in on the heels of this cold front that'll come in Tuesday night, the moisture with that initially moves out. There is some question as to whether we could get a second low that could throw a little bit of moisture at it. This is what the thinking was. Maybe you pick up an inch around Richmond, some of the areas farther north and west. At this point, still lots of questions. It's 6 days out. But the point is, if you see a snowfall projection 6 to 7 days out and it's calling for a foot of snow, don't panic. Stay tuned and make sure you know your weather sources so that we can kind of take a look at this over time and tell you, hey, there's something to it or there isn't. Okay? Right now, let's go to our 10-day forecast, 7-day outlook. You'll notice here as we go into next week, showers with possible mixing in the morning. That's kind of the thinking right now. There could be some wet snowflakes into early Wednesday, and depending on whether we get that second coastal low to draw some more moisture in, we may adjust that up or down a little bit. But right now, bottom line is we're looking at cold air into next week, and it's something that we're going to encourage you to stay tuned to 13 News Now for more updates.
Absolutely.